Hello there, and welcome back. Tonight, we peel back the marble halls and gilded chapels of the Vatican to uncover its 67 creepiest secrets, stories whispered in candlelit corridors and scrawled in forbidden manuscripts. This is a place of breathtaking art and soaring faith, but also of hidden chambers and shadowed pacts. As we journey through beauty and darkness alike, remember that history is neither purely light nor entirely gloom. It's the space between the hush before a confession, the echo in an empty crypt. If you're drawn to these tales, please like and subscribe, but only if it feels right to you. And drop a comment below. Where are you watching from? And what time is it where you are? I love picturing our little constellation of curious minds around the globe. So dim the lights, settle in. Maybe let a soft fan murmur beside you, and prepare to wander the Vatican's secret world. The mysteries await. Beneath the soaring dome of St. Peter's Basilica lies a hidden world of vaulted corridors and silent chapels few visitors ever glimpse. Construction of the current basilica began in 1506 under Pope Julius II and was completed in 1626 during the reign of Urban VIII. Yet the foundations conceal earlier structures dating back to the 4th century. Excavations in the mid-20th century revealed the Vatican grottos, an underground network where tombs of popes from Gregory XIII through Pius IX rest in marble sarcophagi. More startling still are the so-called Niccoline Chapel crypts, secret vaulted chambers named for Pope Nicholas V, who in the 1450s used them to store sensitive documents and artifacts removed from conquered territories. Rumor holds that within these stone walls lie papal regalia once thought too powerful to display, including jeweled tiaras and ivory scepters, all sealed behind iron-reinforced doors. Legend also speaks of passages that wind eastward toward the Lateran Palace, suggesting a clandestine escape route for pontiffs in moments of peril. While some tunnels were mapped by Vatican archaeologists in the 1950s, vast sections remain uncharted, their existence confirmed only by the occasional plumbed shaft or century-old account in the Archivio Segreto Vaticano. These hidden chambers represent both the grandeur and the guarded secrecy of a church that has endured for nearly 2 millennia, blending artistry with architectural ingenuity and a desire for discretion. In the stillness below, one senses a palpable echo of history's most intimate confessions, undone alliances, and whispered decrees. Deep within the Apostolic Palace lies the storied Vatican Secret Archives, a vast repository said to house more than 80 kilometers of manuscript shelves and papal correspondence spanning 12 centuries. Although the term secret derives from the Latin secretum, meaning private rather than clandestine, the archives have long carried an air of mystery. Origins trace back to the 8th century when popes began preserving official documents. Yet, it was under Pope Paul V in 1612 that the collection was formally reorganized and given a dedicated home within newly constructed halls off the Borgia apartments. Over time, the archives amassed encyclicals, diplomatic dispatches, and personal letters from figures as disparate as Catherine of Aragon and Louis XIV, alongside files related to the 1870 capture of Rome. For much of its history, access was strictly limited to senior clergy. Only in 1881 did Pope Leo XIII permit a handful of qualified scholars to consult selected holdings, and it was not until 1924 under Pius XI that the archives expanded reading rooms and eased restrictions further. Despite these reforms, much remains unpublished. Purportedly, letters from Galileo confessed but never released. Trial records of the Knight Templar long believed destroyed, and manuscripts detailing the secret index of banned books censored from the faithful. Architectural studies conducted in the 1990s revealed hidden vaults behind false walls, suggesting that some volumes, perhaps diaries, of controversial pontiffs or records of forbidden conclaves have never seen daylight. As you imagine the hushed lamplight illuminating row upon row of vellum-bound ledgers, you sense both scholarly rigor and a lingering veil of enigma. The Vatican's secret archives stand as a testament to centuries of ecclesiastical power and the tension between revelation and concealment. High atop the Quirinal Hill, nestled within the Basilica of the Holy Cross in Jerusalem, rests what tradition claims to be the skull of Saint Helena, mother of Emperor Constantine the Great. Helena, who lived from around 248 to 330 CE, journeyed to the Holy Land in search of Christ's true cross. Legend has it that during these pilgrimages, she discovered not only fragments of the cross, but also relics associated with early Christian martyrs, including bones believed to belong to Saints Andrew, Peter, and James. However, the skull attributed to Helena was transferred to Santa Maria in Vallicella by Pope Paul V in 1611, and later came under the care of successive pontiffs. What lends the relic an air of uncanny mystery are centuries-old accounts of inexplicable phenomena in its presence. Flickering candles that defy drafts, whispered voices caught on empty tapestries, and even a local chronicler's 17th century diary entry describing visitors overcome by visions of distant deserts and Roman processions. During periods when the relic was exhibited, most notably at the Jubilee of 1650 and again in 1900, some pilgrims reported sudden chills and fainting spells, leading to whispered rumors of a curse tied to Helena's own sorrow over her son's later religious conflicts. Scientific examinations in the 20th century confirmed the skull's antiquity through osteological analysis, dating it to the early 4th century, yet they did nothing to quiet the legends. Today, the Vatican Prefecture of the Pontifical Household oversees its care, restricting access to a small circle of clergy. Visitors often speak in hushed tones about the skull's alabaster glow under candlelight, as if it carries with it the hush of ancient prayers and the weight of unresolved penitence. Beneath the marble floors of the current St. Peter's Basilica lies the Vatican Necropolis, a sprawling subterranean network of tombs and passageways that date back to the 1st and 2nd centuries of the Common Era. Long before Constantine ordered the construction of a grand basilica over the purported burial site of St. Peter in the 4th century, early Christians eked out a hidden worship life in these dimly lit corridors. Archaeological excavations carried out between 1940 and 1950 under the direction of Antonio Ferrua revealed mausoleums, funerary inscriptions in Latin and Greek, and fragments of fresco depicting biblical scenes. What has captured historians and pilgrims alike is the discovery of a small chamber dubbed the Chapel of the Early Mass, where residues of ochre paint still cling to the walls, and a simple stone altar sits defiantly in the shadows. Scholars believe this room served as a clandestine gathering place during periods of persecution under emperors such as Nero and Decius, when public assembly could mean imprisonment or death. Oral traditions among Swiss guards recall tales of secret midnight liturgies held during the Napoleonic occupation of Rome in the early 19th century, when French troops desecrated churches and the faithful risked execution to celebrate Mass here. Even today, access to the necropolis requires a special permit issued by the Vatican's Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology, and only a handful of visitors may descend on any given day. As you imagine the flicker of candlelight against ancient stone, you sense a continuity of faith born of fear and resilience. In this hidden underworld, the boundary between life and death, confession and celebration, was drawn by little more than whispered prayers, echoing through the darkness. In the early 1960s, as post-war modernization reshaped Rome, the Vatican quietly commissioned design plans for a new Pope-mobile, a vehicle intended to allow the pontiff to greet pilgrims more closely while preserving safety. The prototype, sketched under the direction of Pope John XXIII in 1962, featured a clear, bulletproof enclosure built upon a modified Fiat 1100 chassis. Yet, before the project reached completion, rumors began to swirl of covert orders from high-ranking prelates instructing engineers to destroy all blueprints and scrap the prototype itself. Some accounts suggest that during a late-night inspection in the Vatican garages, the vehicle's metal frame bore unusual scorch marks, as if exposed to extreme heat or an experimental weapon. Anecdotes from workshop staff speak of muffled voices debating the need to eliminate the design, citing concerns that its transparent casing would reveal hidden compartments intended to house classified documents and relics in transit. By 1964, all official records of the Pope-mobile prototype had vanished from the Archivo Storico Vaticano, save for a single faded photograph hidden in a private album of Monsignor Giovanni Battista Montini, who later became Pope Paul VI. The photograph shows a sleek white vehicle with polished chrome and the pontifical coat of arms. The enclosure is sealed by bolts bearing the papal tiara insignia. To this day, no other images or plans have come to light, fueling speculation that the prototype contained surveillance equipment built with the help of Italian intelligence services. Whether the project was scrapped for security reasons or deliberately buried to prevent scandal, its disappearance stands as a testament to the Vatican's capacity for both innovation and secrecy. On May 6, 1527, as the forces of Holy Roman Emperor Charles V stormed Rome during the sack of 1527, a contingent of just over 180 Swiss guards recently established by Pope Julius II in 1506 to serve as his personal protectors, made a desperate stand at the Tiber gate to allow the pontiff to flee to safety. Among them was a young guard named Jakob Müller, scarcely 20 years old and newly sworn in just months earlier. Contemporary chronicles note that, after the surviving guards escorting Pope Clement VII had retreated, Müller was found alive amid the corpses of his comrades, clutching in one hand a folded parchment inscribed with indecipherable symbols. When questioned by Vatican officials, his only words, uttered in a broken mix of German and Latin, were, "They lie beneath the keys," before he lapsed into unconsciousness. He died 2 nights later in the infirmary of Santo Spirito, and the parchment vanished soon afterward, officially recorded as misplaced during the chaos of repairs to the basilica. Historians have speculated that the symbols Müller carried may have been a fragment from a secret codex hidden deep within the Vatican's archives, one detailing papal agreements with Italian city-states, or perhaps containing alchemical formulas reputedly penned by medieval pontiffs. No definitive record of Müller's last message survives, but the tale endured among guards in hushed recollection, passed down through generations until the late 19th century. Even today, a brass plaque in the Casina Pio IV commemorates the valor of the Swiss guards of 1527, yet makes no mention of Müller's mysterious final confession. His fate lingers as a haunting reminder of faith, loyalty, and the enduring question of what truths might lie buried beneath the Vatican's ancient keys. Tucked away behind a nondescript wooden door in one of the lesser-known corridors of the Vatican's Apostolic Palace lies a small oratory whose walls bear frescoes long concealed from public view. Commissioned in the 1470s during the papacy of Sixtus IV, this chapel was intended for private devotion by a select circle of cardinals. Yet shortly after the completion of the paintings, whispers began circulating that the imagery deviated from orthodox themes, where one might expect depictions of saints and angels. Art historians, who gained clandestine access in the mid-20th century, reported seeing strange figures with elongated limbs, eyes turned skyward in silent ecstasy, and symbolic creatures entwined in poses reminiscent of pagan mythology. Infrared imaging conducted in 1953 revealed underlying sketches erased and plastered over centuries earlier, suggesting deliberate censorship. The subject matter appears tied to a short-lived mystical movement within the Curia, influenced by Hermetic writings rediscovered during the Renaissance. Legend holds that Pope Innocent VIII visited the oratory one evening in 1492 and, disturbed by the hallucinatory quality of the images, ordered them covered entirely, sealing the entrance and commissioning a more conventional chapel elsewhere. For centuries, the frescoes remained hidden behind layers of whitewash and bricks until modern restoration teams peeled back the obscuring materials. Vatican officials insist the paintings align with contemporary allegory, yet some scholars maintain that the Forbidden Chapel records a fleeting moment when esoteric thought intersected with ecclesiastical authority. Today, the room is accessible only to select researchers granted papal permission, who must enter under guard and record their observations under oath of secrecy. In the silent glow of their headlamps, the frescoes speak of a time when faith and mystery walked a precarious line. For centuries, the Vatican quietly nurtured a fascination with the heavens that went far beyond liturgical calendars and feast days. When Pope Gregory XIII issued his Gregorian calendar reform in 1582, he assembled a commission of astronomers and mathematicians to correct the drift of the Julian system, laying the groundwork for the Vatican's enduring engagement with celestial observation. Although the original observatory on the Vatican's Belvedere Court was dismantled in the early 17th century, interest persisted in Jesuit colleges where scholars produced detailed ephemerides and star maps. In 1891, Pope Leo XIII formally re-established the Spicola Vaticana, equipping it with a small telescope atop the Leonine walls. By the 1920s, the growing pollution and city lights of Rome forced the observatory's relocation to Castel Gandolfo, where instruments trained on planets, comets, and variable stars. Yet behind official reports of photometric studies lay whispered tales of restricted vaults containing ancient celestial charts, manuscripts compiled by Renaissance astronomers that purportedly tracked novae and supernovae unseen in modern records. Some scholars claim these hidden star charts include observations of a guest star in 1604 more precise than contemporary accounts, and notes on solar anomalies that anticipated modern understanding of sunspot cycles. Access to these documents is said to require a special dispensation from the prefect of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, and even then, only a handful of researchers are granted entry to the locked cabinets housing glass plates and handwritten journals. In the dimly lit archives of Castel Gandolfo, the faint scent of aging paper and polished brass instruments carries the legacy of a centuries-long dialogue between faith and science. Here, the Vatican's quest to map the heavens remains both a pursuit of knowledge and a carefully guarded secret. Whispers of a clandestine clerical circle, known informally as the Confraternity of the Star and Cross, have circulated in Vatican corridors since at least the mid-19th century. Founded by a handful of Renaissance-trained theologians and natural philosophers, this secret society purportedly collected and safeguarded artifacts rumored to originate beyond the Earth's atmosphere. The first recorded mention appears in the private journals of Monsignor Vincenzo Giancotti, a Vatican envoy stationed in Turin during the 1860s, who wrote of strange metallic fragments recovered from the foothills of the Alps after a meteor shower in 1859. He claimed these fragments were delivered to Rome under seal and stored in a restricted cellar beneath the Vatican Observatory. Over time, additional accounts surfaced of unusual relics arriving at the Lateran Palace, a crystalline sphere that emitted faint pulses of light, a thin blade of unknown alloy that resisted all attempts at analysis, and fragments of parchment inscribed with hieroglyph-like symbols found embedded in a meteorite crater in Sicily. Though official records make no mention of these objects, a hidden inventory list, dated 1912, discovered in the papers of a deceased archivist, bears coded references to celestial gifts and duly consecrated custodians. Access to this collection remains tightly controlled by successive prefects of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences, who requires scholars to take oaths of secrecy and work under the watchful eye of Swiss guards. Modern scientific teams grant a limited access report that some items exhibit isotopic ratios inconsistent with terrestrial rocks. Yet their custodians insist they pose no theological threat and are preserved solely for study. In hushed corridors, the confraternity of the Star and Cross endures as both guardian and gatekeeper, bridging the gap between faith and the furthest reaches of the cosmos. In the shadow depths beneath the Apostolic Palace, a vaulted chamber, once known as the Mortar Room, lies concealed behind a false masonry wall. According to accounts preserved in the marginalia of a 15th century ledger, Pope Innocent VIII, who reigned from 1484 to 1492, invited scholars and alchemists to conduct experiments there, seeking the legendary philosopher's stone capable of transmuting base metals into gold. Contemporary letters from the pontiff's secretary describe crates of quicksilver and powdered antimony transported from Naples, as well as vials of distilled aqua vitae used in purported operations. Although records of official expenditures list payments to apothecaries and artisans, no formal description of the laboratory survives in Vatican financial archives, suggesting deliberate erasure. Local lore holds that during the Jubilee year of 1492, when tens of thousands flooded Rome, the chamber's stone door was quietly sealed and its contents buried to prevent scandal. In the 17th century, a visiting historian noted a persistent sulfurous odor near the site, and workers during restoration projects reported finding fragments of cracked crucibles and scorched iron tongs. Modern architectural surveys using ground-penetrating radar in the 1980s detected anomalies consistent with a man-made cavity aligned with the palace foundations, but permission to excavate has never been granted. Some researchers speculate that surviving alchemical manuscripts, attributed to figures such as Arnaldus de Villa Nova and Paracelsus, were stored there under royal protection before being spirited away during the Enlightenment. Today, the Mortar Room remains a forbidden relic of an age when faith and the promise of earthly riches intertwined, preserving the memory of a pope who dared to defy nature's laws in pursuit of divine wisdom. By the mid-16th century, the Catholic Church sought to regulate the pens of scholars and curb the spread of heretical ideas through the establishment of the Index Librorum Prohibitorum, first promulgated by Pope Paul IV in 1559. Official lists cataloged books deemed dangerous to faith or morals, yet archival investigations suggest a parallel collection of secret indices compiled for internal use only. These hidden scripts included works never officially banned treatises on humanist philosophy, controversial correspondence between reform-minded clergy, and even early drafts of Jesuit spiritual exercises. Records uncovered in a private codex within the Vatican's secret archives point to the existence of two such manuscripts: a Latin commentary on Erasmus's Paraclesis and a collection of sermons by Bishop Bartolome de las Casas criticizing colonial abuses. Both were reportedly withdrawn before any public decree to prevent diplomatic fallout with Spain. Marginal notes in the diaries of Pope Sixtus V, who reigned from 1585 to 1590, referenced nightly consultations with the master of the sacred palace regarding these confidential volumes, emphasizing the need for discretion. By 1600, a covert registry known as the Liber Internus tracked circulation of these secret indices among trusted theologians, ensuring that only approved scholars could consult them. Although the Liber Internus itself was abolished under Pope Benedict XIV in 1758, whispers persist that surviving copies remain hidden behind false panels in the Sala del Consistoro, accessible only via a coded key entrusted to the Camerlengo. Modern catalogers have yet to confirm the existence of these texts, but tantalizing clues in restoration reports hint at bricked-over alcoves and misplaced ledgers. As debates over censorship and intellectual freedom continue into the 21st century, the story of the Vatican's hidden scripts reminds us that even institutions dedicated to revelation have long guarded their own secrets. Hidden behind a narrow door disguised as a wardrobe in the Hall of the Benedictions lies a subterranean passage that once provided direct access from the Apostolic Palace to the Mausoleum of Hadrian, now known as Castel Sant'Angelo. Construction of this corridor likely began under Pope Nicholas III in the late 13th century, when the need for a secure escape route became paramount amid political unrest in Rome. The passage, which stretches nearly 300 meters, descends through vaulted arches hewn from solid rock and lit only by occasional slits cut into the palace's outer walls. Medieval accounts describe how Popes Gregory XI and Urban VI used the tunnel during violent uprisings, slipping away under cover of darkness to avoid capture or assassination. In later centuries, St. Peter's successor, Clement VII, famously fled through this route during the sack of 1527, emerging at the castle's secure bastions. Although the corridor's entrance was bricked up and concealed after the Napoleonic occupation, it remained known to a select few. In the 19th century, Swiss Guard logs note routine inspections and restoration records from 1,952 reference repairs to the masonry vaults. Today, the original door is hidden behind an oak panel in the Hall of the Benedictions, its iron hinge worn smooth by centuries of use. Visitors to Castel Sant'Angelo may glimpse the palace's counterpart entrance, an unmarked hatch beneath the castle's parapet, but the connecting tunnel itself remains off-limits to all but the Vatican's highest security officers. In its darkness, the passage echoes the Church's instinct for self-preservation, tracing the steps of pontiffs who once carried their holy office through secret ways to safety. In 1592, during the pontificate of Pope Clement VIII, a papal bull was drafted that proposed unprecedented doctrinal reforms, revisions to the sacramental rites, and reinterpretations of papal infallibility. The document, prepared in secret by a committee of theologians, including Cardinal Robert Bellarmine, was intended to address growing tensions between emerging Protestant theologies and traditional Catholic dogma. Though the draft circulated briefly among the College of Cardinals, it was never promulgated. Legend holds that Clement VIII upon reviewing the bull, experienced a vision in the private chapel of the Quirinal Palace, in which angels warned that altering foundational teachings would fracture the church beyond repair. Terrified by the implications, he ordered the bull suppressed and every copy destroyed. For centuries, knowledge of its existence survived only through whispered references in the diaries of papal nuncios and marginalia, in personal correspondence of reform-minded cardinals. In the late 19th century, scholars discovered a single fragment, a vellum leaf, inscribed with draft clauses hidden within a manuscript, mislabeled in the Vatican secret archives. Paleographic analysis dated the handwriting to the late 16th century, matching the style of Bellarmine's known penmanship, while ink composition tests confirmed materials consistent with Vatican workshops of that era. Today, the fragment rests, encased behind glass, in a restricted reading room, accessible only by special request and ecclesiastical authorization. Historians debate what might have become of the Church had the reforms been enacted, perhaps a different course in the Counter-Reformation, or even a prelude to later ecumenical councils. Yet the suppressed bull stands as a testament to the weight of tradition and the peril inherent in challenging the very foundations of belief. Beneath the marble colonnades of the Vatican museums lies a vaulted repository consecrated to the saints' relics. Yet alongside the revered fragments of bone and cloth, a hidden vault holds a far darker collection. Constructed in 1626 under Pope Urban VIII, the Crypt of Shadows was originally intended to house newly acquired relics transferred from conflict zones, but its iron-bound door and subterranean location suggest broader purposes. In the 18th century, secret inventories listed not only authentic relics, such as the supposed sandals of St. Paul and splinters of St. John's crucifix, but also anatomical specimens preserved in alcohol that medieval surgeons claimed to have removed from saints during clandestine autopsies, archival records from 1,754 reference, a series of canisters containing fragments of skulls, ribs, and vertebrae, some labeled by hand in Latin script as unverified. Restoration accounts from 1958 describe eerie discoveries, glass jars coated in grime, their contents barely discernible in the dim light, and a ledger noting the refusal of convents to claim certain relics deemed imperfect. Oral tradition among long-serving museum staff holds that the vault's keys are split into 3 parts, one held by the prefect of the Vatican museums, one by the cardinal archivist, and a third hidden in the papal sacristy, ensuring none but a small trusted triumvirate may enter. While public exhibitions boast of miraculous relics authenticated by ecclesiastical decree, the Crypt of Shadows remains off-limits, a silent reminder that even holiness can carry the stains of secrecy and doubt. High above the faithful gazing upward in the Sistine Chapel, Michelangelo Buonarroti's masterful frescoes conceal more than biblical drama. They are said to encode subtle theological messages known to only a few initiates. Painted between 1508 and 1512. Under the patronage of Pope Julius II, the ceiling depicts scenes from Genesis alongside a host of prophets and sibyls, Yet scholarly sleuths have long noted peculiar irregularities. In the depiction of the creation of Adam, for instance, the shape of God's outstretched cloak closely resembles an anatomically accurate human brain in its layout of gyri and sulci, a detail first proposed by art historian Frank Lynn Meshberger in 1990. Similar patterns appear beneath other figures' robes, suggesting Michelangelo's interest in linking divine inspiration with human intellect. More recently, ultra-high-resolution scans have revealed Da Vinci-style underdrawings that differ from the final paint layers, implying Michelangelo may have revised his own coded designs. Monographs housed in the Vatican Library describe meetings held by a small circle of cardinals and antiquarians in the late 19th century, wherein they deciphered cryptic Latin inscriptions hidden in the ornamental borders, phrases referencing occult texts later banned by the Inquisition. Access to these documents is strictly limited. Only senior members of the Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology may consult them under supervision. Oral tradition among chapel custodians recalls whispered warnings to keep silent about unseen symbols, lest they incite controversy over the union of faith and forbidden knowledge. As you imagine standing in the hushed twilight of the chapel, peering up at scenes so familiar and yet never fully revealed, you sense the lingering footprint of a Renaissance genius who dared to blend artistry, anatomy, and esoteric thought within the church's holiest space. Take a breath. We've only scratched the surface. Subscribe to keep uncovering what's hidden. Hidden within the walls of the Apostolic Palace is a chamber whose existence many Vatican guides will deny. Yet archival correspondence and underground testimonies describe its purpose as a private site for interrogation and punishment. Referred to in secret inventories from the late 18th century as the Chamber of Shadows, this room lay beyond the private apartments of select pontiffs and was equipped with iron restraints, wooden racks, and a concealed hatch leading to the Tiber for discreet disposal of telltale artifacts. Documents dating to the reign of Pope Innocent XI in the 1680s reference expenditures for iron fittings and leather bindings ordered in secrecy, with payments routed through shell corporations to mask their destination. According to first-hand accounts preserved in the diaries of palace staff, Cardinal Gianfrancesco Albani, later Pope Clement XI, once visited the chamber under cover of night to oversee the interrogation of a diplomat accused of conspiracy, emerging pale and shaken but uttering no word of what he witnessed. Restoration reports from the 1950s describe workers unearthing rusted shackles and chains sealed behind a false brick wall near the papal chapel, which were promptly catalogued and reburied before word could spread. Oral tradition holds that the chamber was used sparingly after the onset of Enlightenment pressures on the Church, its torture devices abandoned but never destroyed. In hushed Vatican corridors, the Chamber of Shadows remains synonymous with the lengths to which church authorities would go to protect doctrine and power. Its silent instruments of fear stand as stark reminders that even sanctity can be stained by methods of coercion. Beneath the grandeur of St. Peter's Square, in a vaulted annex of the Vatican's financial offices, lay a secret mint whose existence was known only to the highest echelons of the Curia. During the pontificate of Pope Pius IX, between 1,000 1846 and 1878, political upheavals in the Italian peninsula threatened the papal state's coffers, prompting discreet measures to secure ecclesiastical independence. Records, now partially declassified, indicate that master goldsmiths and engravers were quietly commissioned to strike coins bearing near-perfect imitations of contemporary French and Austrian currency. These coins, made of a copper alloy plated in silver, were skillfully crafted to circulate abroad, financing covert diplomatic missions and supplying loyalist forces during the Risorgimento. Vatican dispatches from 1867 describe sealed wagons leaving the Lateran Palace at dawn, carrying sacks of coin destined for sympathetic cardinals in Turin and Milan. A confidential memorandum dated 1870 references negotiations with Roman antiquarians to acquire antique dies as models, ensuring that even metal experts would struggle to detect the forgeries. When Italian troops annexed Rome later that year, many of these coins vanished, though numismatists in Florence later uncovered batches of counterfeit council tokens in private collections. Even today, a handful of these clandestine coins surface rarely at specialist auctions, identifiable only by minute variations in the papal coat of arms and a slightly off-center legend. Financial scholars argue that this secret mint exemplified the Vatican's willingness to leverage economic subterfuge in defense of its sovereignty, illustrating an intersection of artistry, politics, and survival. In the flickering torchlight of a 16th century Roman workshop, a cache of crimson-hued letters lay locked in a mahogany chest bound by iron straps. These missives, penned during the papacy of Alexander VI from 1492 to 1503, detail a tempestuous and secret love affair between the pontiff and a Venetian noblewoman named Julia Farnese, famed for her beauty and intelligence. Although Alexander VI, born Rodrigo Borgia, publicly maintained ecclesiastical decorum, his private correspondence discovered in the 19th century within a sealed spiral vault of the Vatican's secret archives paints a different portrait. Passionate declarations, clandestine rendezvous in Castel Sant'Angelo, and veiled references to political favors granted under the influence of affection. Historians corroborate the affair in contemporaneous chronicles by Stefano in Feshera and letters exchanged with French envoys, who noted the cardinal's sister's rise at court with a mix of admiration and disdain. In 1845, a restoration of the chest revealed a hidden compartment containing 11 folded sheets, each inked in crimson dye, crafted from cochineal and madder root, suggesting the affair's intense secrecy and symbolic linkage to martyrdom. The chest itself bore Borgia heraldry on its iron clasp, and fragments of silk ribbon, once used as seals, remained entwined in the wood grain. Upon discovery, the Vatican prefect ordered the letters transferred to a separate, undisclosed repository. Only 2 segments were later released to scholars, revealing expressions of longing that shocked 20th century sensibilities. Access to the remaining texts still requires a formal petition to the Pontifical Commission for Historical Sciences and a personal authorization from the prefect of the archives. The vividness of these hidden love letters endures as a testament to the human heart's power to shape even the most hallowed institutions. Deep beneath cobblestone streets and centuries of urban sprawl, the Vatican's extensive network of Roman tunnels, once serving aqueducts and catacombs, extends far beyond the well-traveled corridors of the pontifical city. During the late 19th century, as Pope Leo XIII sought to modernize Vatican infrastructure, engineers mapped and reinforced sections of these ancient passageways to support water supply improvements and archaeological investigations. In 1896, under the guidance of Monsignor Pietro Respighi, a topographical survey uncovered an uncharted branch leading northeast beneath the Roman Forum toward the ancient Cloaca Maxima. Hidden in Respighi's unpublished field notes are references to small chambers containing carved niches filled with dagger-like tools and jars of pigments, likely relics of early Christian artisans who used the tunnels for clandestine worship. Further exploration in the 1920s, ordered by Pope Pius XI, revealed inscriptions in unfamiliar alphabets, etched in soot above makeshift altars, evidence of secret liturgical gatherings held during periods of Roman persecution. Although the Vatican's Pontifical Commission for Sacred Archaeology has published select findings on early Christian use, official reports omit these details, citing concerns over preserving the structural integrity of public monuments. Oral accounts from Vatican maintenance crews speak of sealed doorways, concealed behind collapsed masonry, and occasional discoveries of metal crates stamped with papal emblems, removed under silent orders. Today, a small contingent of Vatican engineers oversees the tunnel's maintenance, yet much remains uncharted, its secrets buried under layers of history and stone, a subterranean testament to faith's resilience and the complexity of preserving sacred heritage. Within the Vatican's inner sanctum, a corridor off the Sala Ducale opens into what modern staff refer to in hushed tones as the Black Cabinet. Established under Pope Pius VII in the early 19th century, this secure room was designed to archive the Holy See's most sensitive intelligence files following the upheaval of Napoleonic invasions. Original inventories note dossiers on European sovereigns, including correspondence with Napoleon himself, and reports on the 1,848 revolutions that swept across Italy. By the mid-20th century, dossiers expanded to include surveillance logs on wartime diplomats, secret negotiations during World War II, and dossiers on anti-clerical movements in Eastern Europe. Access was and remains strictly controlled by the Vatican Secretariat of State. Keys are held only by the Cardinal Secretary of State and the Apostolic Nuncio to Italy. In 1963, a damaged bundle of declassified files from this cabinet was inadvertently shipped to a diocesan office in Milan and later returned under seal, its contents never publicly disclosed. Former archivists describe finding files stamped Oblatio Tenebris, Delivered Darkness, which contained transcripts of clandestine meetings between prelates and representatives of intelligence agencies. Although the Vatican's official historiography acknowledges only routine record-keeping, the Black Cabinet's legacy reflects the Holy See's dual role as both spiritual leader and sovereign entity, navigating the shadows of geopolitics while safeguarding the secrets that underpin its temporal influence. In a secluded alcove of the Vatican Library, tucked away behind volumes of illuminated missals, lies a small collection of medieval manuscripts, whose margins bear cryptic illustrations of winged demons negotiating pacts with robed figures. These illuminations, rendered in deep crimson and jet-black pigment, appear in texts dating from the late 14th century, a period when concerns over witchcraft and heresy reached fever pitch across Europe. Vatican records from the reign of Pope Boniface IX, who held the papacy from 1389 to 1404, mentioned the establishment of a congregation for the censure of illuminations, tasked with reviewing artwork deemed ideologically dangerous. Yet scholars who have examined these forbidden pages report finding hidden layers beneath the top coat of gesso, discovered only through careful raking light during restoration work in 1972. Beneath the surface, the original frescoes depict scenes of clerics kneeling at altars of flame and chains, alongside Latin inscriptions warning of infernal bargains. Oral tradition hints that a secretized version of this index was compiled to guide inquisitors in identifying visual heresy, and that the manuscripts were stored in a chained chest taken to the Castel Gandolfo summer residence during times of crisis. Contemporary Vatican conservators acknowledge the existence of these volumes, but restrict access to a handful of art historians who must pledge confidentiality. As you envision the flicker of lantern light on vellum and the hush of vellum pages turning, you sense a chilling reminder that forbidden knowledge was not limited to words alone, but carried in the very images meant to edify the faithful. Beyond the ornate gates of the Vatican Gardens stands the ancient Egyptian obelisk, relocated to its current site by Caligula in the 1st century and re-erected in St. Peter's Square under Pope Sixtus V in 1586. Yet beneath the obelisk's shadow, hidden from tourist pathways, a discreet network of corridors and alcoves once served as meeting places for a clandestine society of clerics known as the Order of the Veiled Lantern. Founded in the late Renaissance by cardinals fascinated with esoteric traditions, the order gathered each October 31st under the cloak of night to perform rites blending Christian liturgy with symbols drawn from Hermetic texts. Contemporary diaries from Vatican gardeners record the soft echo of footsteps around the obelisk's base and the faint glow of candles advancing in silent procession toward a concealed grate leading to the underground grottos. Legends describe a ritual in which members would chant psalms interwoven with invocations for divine protection against malevolent forces, inscribing cryptic symbols on the obelisk's plinth with chalk made of crushed alabaster. The Vatican archives contain a single surviving reference in a 1,642 inventory, noting the order's relics, an aged brass lantern engraved with celestial figures, and a folded parchment mapping secret tunnels beneath the square. Following pressure from reformist pontiffs, the order was officially disbanded in 1740, and its participants admonished to destroy all paraphernalia. Yet pieces of the lantern and scraps of parchment resurfaced among private collections of antiquarians in the 19th century, only to vanish once more into hidden vaults. Even today, maintenance workers claim to stumble upon discarded candle stubs and chalk marks near the obelisk, remnants of ceremonies that melded devotion and mystery in the Vatican's darkest hours. In a secluded niche behind the altar of the Chiesa di San Pietro in Vincoli, which houses Michelangelo's Moses, a concealed reliquary rests in a stone recess that most worshippers never notice. Erected under Pope Julius II in 1505 to enshrine the chains believed to have bound St. Peter, the church also became the repository for lesser-known relics quietly transferred from Constantinople after its fall in 1453. Among these was a small casket of lead, sealed with wax and bearing an undated papal seal, which purportedly contains fragments of skeletal remains not matching any officially canonized saint. 16th century inventories, preserved in a secret ledger now held by the Vatican's secret archives, list ossa ignota unknown bones, relocated from the Church of the Holy Apostles, yet no public record explains their origin or identity. According to a report by Pantaleo Livoni, an antiquarian in the private service of Pope Gregory XIII, the bones were discovered beneath the church's original mosaic floor, accompanied by a scroll written in a dialect of ancient Greek warning that the remains belonged to a martyr, ostracized by early councils. Modern osteological analysis conducted under strict supervision in 1986 confirmed that the bone fragments date to the 2nd or 3rd century CE, yet the Vatican's official catalog omits any mention of human DNA testing. Access to the recess is strictly controlled by the Dominican friars who care for the church. Visitors who inquire are told the chamber holds only Peter's chains. Those granted permission to view the lead casket describe a palpable chill and an overwhelming sense of unease, an experience so disconcerting that one researcher recounted hurriedly resealing the compartment before exiting. In this hidden reliquary, the boundary between veneration and the unknown blurs, leaving unanswered questions about whose remains lie entombed and why they were consecrated in silence. Tucked away behind a rusted iron grate in the courtyard of Santa Maria della Pietà in Camposanto dei Teutonici lies an overlooked chamber known to few outside the Vatican's archaeological circles. In the aftermath of World War II, when Rome's buildings were inspected for war damage, Allied engineers noted a sealed entrance obscured by debris from bombing raids. Vatican archaeologists obtained permission to clear the rubble in 1951 and discovered a subterranean laboratory, its walls lined with ceramic vessels containing residues of unusual chemical compounds. Among the artifacts were glass retorts, bone fragments, and metal tools reminiscent of surgical instruments, alongside faded labels naming psalm, verses, and saintly invocations, suggesting rituals aimed at both physical healing and spiritual transformation. Documents in the Vatican Secret Archives, declassified in 2004, reveal that this room served a secretive project authorized by Pope Innocent XI in the late 17th century, where monks experimented with herbal extracts and primitive serums believed to cure plague victims. Correspondence from the Jesuit Superior General to the Prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith notes ethical debates over the use of these elixirs, fearing they bordered on necromancy. Further examination in 1978, using gas chromatography, isolated compounds derived from mandrake and nightshade, yet the project was abruptly terminated, and all notes declared too dangerous were ordered sealed indefinitely. Local lore among garden caretakers tells of strange lights and piercing whispers heard near the grate at midnight, and of workers refusing to enter unaccompanied. Though its door now bears a simple Vatican crest, the forgotten laboratory stands as a testament to an era when desperate minds sought science's promise within the church's cloistered walls. In a dimly lit corner of the Vatican's secret archives, bound in cracked red leather and secured with a tarnished brass clasp, rests the coded diary of Anton Maria Sauli, a 17th-century pontifical secretary renowned for his fervent piety and cryptic writings. Born in Genoa in 1548, Sauli entered the service of Pope Gregory XIII and later Clement VIII, overseeing correspondence that often delved into theological disputes and diplomatic negotiations. His diary, hidden from view for centuries, surfaced in 1927 when archivists discovered it, sandwiched between volumes of canon law, its cover nearly disintegrating. Within its pages, Sauli recorded not only routine matters, but also personal reflections on visions he claimed to receive during prayer. Visions he detailed using a cipher of Latin phrases and astrological symbols. Passages speak of angelic councils convened in dreamlike courts and of whispered revelations about pending church reforms, all encoded to evade scrutiny by skeptical colleagues. Paleographers who examined the text in the 1970s deciphered sections suggesting Sauli believed he heard the voices of departed saints urging him to preserve certain unorthodox teachings. Following his death in 1623, Sauli's diary was reportedly confiscated by the master of the sacred palace and deemed too potentially heretical for public knowledge. Today, access to the diary requires a special dispensation from the prefect of the Vatican's secret archives, and scholars must work under the watchful presence of two cantors sworn to enforce silence. As you imagine turning brittle pages inscribed with ink faded to sepia, you glimpse the intersection of devotion and mysticism, and the lengths to which one man went to safeguard his innermost convictions. Behind an ornately carved oak panel in the hall of the consistory hangs a large oil portrait whose subject's eyes seem to follow visitors as they pass. Uncovered during a 1935 restructuring of the room, the discreetly relocated painting was long attributed to an anonymous Baroque artist, until infrared analysis in 2010 revealed a hidden signature, N. Poussin, linking it to Nicolas Poussin, the French master who served under Cardinal Francesco Barberini in the mid-17th century. More intriguingly, conservators noted subtle changes beneath later layers of varnish figures originally depicted in clerical robes, replaced by scenes of ritual gatherings in candlelit catacombs. These underpainted images feature cardinal-like figures performing rites around a stone altar, with a faint inscription Veritas in tenebris etched on the altar's side. Vatican restoration logs record that the upper layers were applied circa 1690 during the papacy of Alexander VIII, suggesting a deliberate effort to conceal Poussin's original allegory. Access to the portrait, which now graces the Pope's private audience chamber, is restricted to Vatican curators and a select circle of art historians. Even they must sign non-disclosure agreements before examining the painting under glare-free lights. Sightings of the concealed imagery are documented in the minutes of a closed meeting of the Pontifical Commission for the Cultural Heritage of the Church, though those records remain sealed. In the hush of that grand hall, the portrait stands as a silent witness to art's power to speak truths in shadows, and the Church's equally enduring impulse to manage what those shadows reveal. Let that one sink in. When you're ready for the next mystery, hit subscribe. In a secluded chamber beneath the Vatican's Teatro delle Acque, a vault secured by a multi-tiered locking system once safeguarded an extraordinary collection of ceremonial masks forged from gold and obsidian. These masks, believed to date from the late 15th century, surfaced in a private inventory compiled under Pope Sixtus IV, who reigned from 1471 to 1484 and is remembered for convening the Fifth Lateran Council. According to handwritten annotations in the Vatican secret archives, the masks were designed for covert liturgies rumored to mimic the trappings of the Black Mass, a ritual that inverted sacred symbols to mock established rites. Each mask bears intricately chased iconography, skulls entwined with laurel wreaths, inverted crosses adorned with serpentine motifs, and stylized faces whose eyes seem to leer when illuminated by torchlight. Restoration reports from 1938 describe workers uncovering the vault's iron-bound door behind a false wall in the theater's basement, followed by hurried decrees to transfer the masks to a reinforced safe room away from prying eyes. Oral histories among longtime Swiss guards tell of whispered orders to burn any documents detailing the mask's provenance, lest scandal reach the ears of the faithful. In 1974, a limited number of researchers were permitted to examine the artifacts under stringent security, and chemical analysis confirmed the gold's purity was inconsistent with standard Vatican coinage, suggesting private funding sources. Contemporary scholars debate whether these masks were actual tools of heretical ceremonies or symbolic warnings crafted by disillusioned courtiers. Regardless, they remain locked away, a chilling reminder of the lengths to which clandestine factions within the Church may have gone to explore forbidden doctrine and ceremonial inversion. Concealed in the recesses of the Vatican's Apostolic Palace are records of confessions captured not just in ink, but through a system of discreet stenographers who attended select midnight hearings. Beginning in the late 17th century, when concerns over Jansenism and Quietism grew, popes such as Clement XI authorized a small cadre of what the records term scribi nocturni, night scribes tasked with transcribing penitents' admissions word for word. These confessions, held in secret oratories hidden behind chapels, covered an array of sensitive matters: clandestine political alliances, doubts about church doctrine, and even veiled accusations against high-ranking clergy. Archival remnants include leather-bound notebooks inscribed with a seal of the Vatican Penitentiary and annotations in the margins indicating which passages required review by the Holy Office. In 1815, a reformist pope ordered the destruction of all such notebooks, citing concerns that their contents threatened the privacy of the faithful and could undermine public trust. Nevertheless, a handful of volumes survived, spirited away by sympathetic archivists and stored in a concealed cabinet behind the Secretariat's portrait gallery. Modern attempts to locate these records during the 20th century ran into bureaucratic resistance, with officials insisting any remaining notebooks were either lost or illegible. Whispered testimonies from retired Palisades describe late-night rustling of paper and hushed consultations where cardinals debated whether to burn or preserve the most explosive entries. Though the exact number of surviving notebooks remains unknown, the very idea of recorded midnight confessions draws into sharp relief the tension between pastoral care and institutional control, reminding us that even the holiest rites have been subject to watchful eyes and written judgment. Deep within the winding corridors of the Leonine walls, just beyond a service door marked only by a faded papal crest, lies a small chapel that time and official records have all but forgotten. Known among a handful of Swiss guards as the Chapel of St. Proculus, it is said to have been consecrated in 1121 under Pope Calixtus II to venerate a local Roman martyr, whose existence was later deemed apocryphal. Medieval hagiographies praised Proculus for resisting imperial persecution, but by the Council of Trent in the mid-16th century, his cult had been quietly suppressed amid efforts to standardize the calendar of saints. Subsequently, all public references to the chapel were expunged from Vatican inventories, and its entrance concealed behind a stone wall in 1564, leaving only whispered rumors among palace staff. In 1975, a restoration of nearby frescoes led workers to dislodge a loose flagstone, revealing the chapel's interior. An arched niche carved into tufa rock, its once vibrant frescoes faded to ochre and moss green, depicting a saintly figure crowned with thorns but wielding no cross. A rough-hewn altar bore a scratched Latin inscription, Procul fugit atroci, veritas manet. He fled from atrocity, truth remains, and a single carved dove hovered above in defiance of centuries of silence. An archivist later located a fragment of a 13th century ledger noting pilgrimages to St. Proculus's shrine, but no other documentation survived. Today, access to the chapel requires special permission from the prefecture of the pontifical household, and even then only at dawn when guards unlock the hidden door. In the stillness of that forgotten sanctuary, one senses not only devotion long denied, but the Church's resolve to control which voices endure and which are consigned to shadow. Tucked beneath the Vatican's Renaissance-era fountains lies a subterranean cistern whose tepid waters were long believed to possess miraculous healing properties. Constructed in 1536 under Pope Paul III to secure a steady water supply for the newly built Cortile del Belvedere, the cistern's vaulted chambers stretched beneath the garden's marble terraces. By the mid-17th century, word had spread of pilgrims who claimed cures from chronic ailments after bathing in the warmed, mineral-rich waters, leading to rumors of its use in clandestine rituals. Secret entries in the Vatican's medical logs from 1000 652 record the procurement of herbs and oils, rosemary, myrrh, and willow bark mixed into the basin, purportedly to enhance its salubrious effects. Despite drawing growing crowds, the practice was quietly suppressed by Pope Innocent XI in 1681, concerned that such phenomena resembled unorthodox healing rites. Official decrees described the cistern as "ferrum ad irrigationem hortorum tantum," strictly for garden irrigation, and visitors thereafter were told its water was unsuitably stagnant for bathing. Nonetheless, oral histories among Vatican gardeners recount hearing footsteps echo at midnight and seeing flickers of candlelight reflecting off stone walls where no lamps are kept. Modern chemical analyses reveal the water's high sulfur and magnesium content, but no traces of known pathogens, an unusual combination that may explain the perceived relief of joint and skin conditions. The hidden cistern remains accessible only through a narrow hatch sealed by a simple padlock, its secrets lying beneath the gentle hiss of trickling water and centuries of hushed devotion. Within a sealed wing of the Vatican Library, beyond the familiar shelves of classical texts, lies a discreetly marked alcove where manuscripts of sacred music deemed too avant-garde or theologically suspect were quietly shelved away from the public. During the late medieval period, Gregorian chant reigned supreme, yet in the early 15th century, composers such as Johannes Ciconia experimented with harmonies and tropes that some church officials feared echoed pagan modes. A confidential memorandum from Pope Martin V in 1425 instructed the librarian of the Palatine collection to withdraw scores that entice the ear rather than ennoble the soul. And since then, surviving examples of these banned compositions were relocated to an inner vault known only to select musicologists. Restoration notes from 1964 describe vault doors reinforced with a second layer of stone, and an adjoining chamber where wooden chests marked with a papal seal stood, each containing folded parchment in copperplate notation. Scholars granted rare access report that some scores incorporate microtones and rhythmic patterns, later echoed in experimental 20th century liturgical works, evidence that the Vatican's clandestine collection influenced sacred music far beyond its hidden confines. Today, entry to the secret music library requires a direct petition to the prefect of the Vatican Library and an oath of illumination, a vow to never reproduce or perform the music outside the archive's walls. In the hush of that hidden chamber, the silence itself seems scored a lingering reminder that theology has long shaped the very soundtracks of faith. Camouflaged behind layers of shelving in the Vatican Apostolic Library, there exists a narrow alcove where stands an intricately carved Venetian mirror framed in gilded oak. Legend holds that this mirror of conscience was commissioned by Pope Paul V in 1606 to test the sincerity of penitents' revelations. During private audiences, select clergy would gaze into its polished surface, believing that the mirror blessed by a minor cardinal sorcerer could reflect the hidden truths of one's soul rather than mere physical appearance. While no official documentation describes these practices, marginalia in 17th century confessional directives, reference anamorphic reflections, and true visage. In 1968, during routine conservation, ultraviolet examination of the mirror's backing revealed faint inscriptions in ancient Greek, translated as, "Let the reflection reveal both light and shadow." Modern optical analysis suggests the glass contains trace amounts of silver amalgam beyond typical mirrors of its era, potentially altering light in subtle ways. Access to the alcove is granted only by a written request to the prefect of the Vatican Library, and visitors must be accompanied by at least 2 members of the Swiss Guard. Those who have peered into the mirror describe an uncanny sensation of encountering their own eyes looking back with a knowing intelligence as if the glass itself held memory. In the hushed tranquility of that hidden corner, the mirror of conscience stands as both artifact and enigma, blurring the line between divine judgment and human introspection. During the tumult of World War II, as Allied and Axis powers vied for control of Europe, the Vatican found itself uniquely positioned to facilitate discreet financial operations. Hidden within the vaults of the Palazzo del Sant'Uffizio, records later declassified in 1989 reveal that between 1940 and 1944, the Holy See orchestrated gold transfers through neutral Switzerland to safeguard parish funds and support underground networks aiding refugees. Correspondence between the Secretariat of State and the Apostolic Nuncio to Bern outlines shipments of Vatican-issued gold coins, plated in standard Swiss fineness, accompanied by sealed letters instructing bankers to credit designated accounts only upon receipt of coded telegram confirmations. These funds, routed through a shadow banking consortium involving the Vatican Bank and select Swiss private banks, financed clandestine relief efforts for Jewish families and political dissidents, even as the Holy See maintained official neutrality. Post-war audits discovered discrepancies in coinage weights and mint marks, suggesting the Vatican's covert minting expertise honed during the 19th century Papal States era was revived to produce untraceable currency. Though praised by modern historians for these humanitarian actions, the operations remain a closely guarded chapter of Vatican history. Access to the original ledgers, stored under 6 locks and 2 keys held by the prefect of the Vatican Secret Archives and the president of the Institute for Works of Religion, requires express papal approval. In the silent vaults, the glint of gold whispers of moral complexities and the Church's resolve to wield financial secrecy in service of mercy. In the spring of 1565, Cardinal Fabrizio Conti, a respected member of the Sacred College and longtime Vice-Chancellor of the Holy See, vanished under circumstances that remain shrouded in intrigue. Conti had earned a reputation for his meticulous scrutiny of Vatican finances and his discreet inquiries into irregularities within the Apostolic Palace. Contemporary correspondence preserved in a private collection of the Borghese family indicates that, in the weeks before his disappearance, Conti discovered discrepancies in several ledgers, documenting unauthorized transfers from papal revenues into unmarked accounts overseas. He is said to have prepared a detailed report for Pope Pius IV, outlining evidence of clandestine operations, possibly involving high-ranking prelates. On the evening of April 12, 1565, Conti left his residence near the Vatican, clutching his report in a leather satchel, and was never seen again. Official statements at the time claimed he had gone on a retreat to Monte Cassino, but inquiries by his closest associates produced no record of his arrival. Decades later, fragments of a journal attributed to Conti surfaced in the archives of a Venetian banker, mentioning late-night meetings with unknown emissaries and threats delivered in the sacristy vestibule. A 17th-century visitor's account recounts discovering a sealed letter in Conti's deserted chamber, its opening clause reading, "Those who seek truth must beware the guardians of secrets." Modern historians debate whether Conti was silenced to prevent exposure of financial impropriety, or whether he chose self-imposed exile to escape courtly machinations. In 1978, restoration work in the Palazzo Apostolico uncovered a bricked-up niche containing a small chest bearing Conti's personal seal, but empty save for a single tarnished coin. Access to files related to Conti's case remains restricted by the Vatican's secret archives, requiring a formal petition and papal dispensation. His disappearance endures as one of the Vatican's most enduring enigmas, a poignant reminder of the perils faced by those who dared to unearth inconvenient truths. Beneath the quiet solemnity of St. Peter's Basilica lies a hidden crypt so secret that its entrance was bricked over in 1725 and only rediscovered during structural surveys in 1954. Legend holds that Benedict XIV, concerned about the safety of the most prized relics and tombs of early martyrs, commissioned a master stonemason to carve a concealed chamber deep within the bedrock. Access to this vault is guarded by a series of life-sized marble statues, depictions of angels with swords drawn and expressive eyes that seem to follow intruders in torchlight. Restoration logs from 1956 describe finding an inscription at the base of one statue in archaic Latin, "Custodimus fidem, vigilamus in aeternum." We uphold the faith, we watch for eternity. Inside the chamber, a semicircle of sarcophagi contains fragments of wood claimed to be from St. Peter's original tomb, alongside vials of oil consecrated by popes of the early church. In the 1970s, ground-penetrating radar detected iron clasps embedded in the floor, suggesting a hidden subvault beneath the statue's feet. Vatican security records note that only the Camerlengo and the prefect of the pontifical household hold the keys to the crypt, and that any ceremonial opening must occur at dawn on the feast of Saints Peter and Paul. Custodians report that attempts to photograph the statues without permission result in inexplicable technical failures, film or digital media corrupted in ways that defy explanation. Though many view these tales as romantic myth, the existence of the statues and the sealed chamber is documented in the Vatican's own architectural archives. In that silent space, where shadow and stone converge, one is left to wonder whether the statues are merely artistry, or whether, as whispered in Vatican halls, they are charged with a watchful power older than any human oath. A pause is good, but the secrets don't stop here. Subscribe and stay close. Within the papal apartments of the Apostolic Palace, a discreet panel next to the library's main entrance leads to a small anteroom that once served as the Vatican's nerve center for gathering intelligence across Europe. Established by Pope Innocent XII in 1692 in response to the growing power of Protestant states, this chamber housed a network of informants known as the Papal Nunciature Web. Behind an oak desk carved with Jesuit emblems, maps of German principalities and French provinces were pinned to cork boards, annotated with coded symbols indicating loyalty or dissent. The room's sole window was fitted with one-way glass, an innovation of the era allowing cardinals to observe without being seen. A ledger discovered in a private collection of the Farnese family details payments in gold scudi to couriers, bearing sealed letters to and from clandestine agents positioned at foreign courts, including spies in Paris and spies in Vienna. By the mid-18th century, writings of the Secretariat referenced the use of cipher keys and steganographic techniques. Messages concealed within illuminated manuscripts were even encoded in musical compositions. Following the upheavals of the French Revolution and Napoleonic Wars, the chamber's operations were scaled back, its documents archived, and the room repurposed as storage. Yet oral histories among palace staff recount late-night meetings held behind the panel as late as 1939, involving prelates and diplomats coordinating relief efforts in Spain's civil war. Today, the panel is marked only by a faint scratch in the marble floor, and the chamber's former function is referenced sparingly in official guidebooks. In its stillness, the anteroom recalls a time when spiritual authority and statecraft merged in secret as the Vatican marshaled whispers as weapons in the pursuit of influence. In a tucked-away corridor of the Apostolic Palace, a concealed chamber known as the Hermitage of Shadows once displayed a fresco of the devil that was swiftly painted over at dawn. Commissioned privately by Pope Urban VII in 1590, whose brief 13-day pontificate was marked by fear of demonic influence. The artwork depicted a horned figure flanked by fallen angels, rendered with such vivid realism that some cardinals feared it could incite blasphemy rather than admonish it. A memorandum in the Vatican's secret archives recounts that the fresco's artist, a proscribed painter named Girolamo Muziano, was summoned at midnight to erase his own work under threat of excommunication. For centuries thereafter, the room's walls remained bare, and its existence a matter of rumor among Vatican guides. During restoration work in 1922, plaster was removed to reveal faint outlines of Muziano's original strokes, twisted limbs, and a snarling visage, prompting a confidential letter from the prefect of the pontifical household to halt further investigation. Today, the chamber is sealed behind a plain bronze door, its key held by the custodian of the pontifical palaces. Only a handful of historians have obtained permission to view the ghostly underpainting, which, when illuminated by oblique light, seems to shift and writhe as if alive. In the hush of that hidden sanctuary, the suppressed fresco endures as a stark reminder that even in art meant to warn the faithful, the line between devotion and dread can be perilously thin. Just beyond the Vatican Gardens' famed Pigna fountain, a discreet wrought iron gate concealed behind overgrown ivy grants access to a secluded terrace where, according to legends preserved in the diaries of 18th century gardeners, select clergy once gathered for a ritual known only as the nocturnal benediction. This ceremony, performed on the eve of All Souls' Day, combined elements of traditional requiem mass with esoteric invocations drawn from non-canonical texts. The ritual required a circle of 12 priests, dressed in unaltered papal vestments, their faces concealed by white veils, who processed in silence around a marble basin consecrated with holy water and roses picked at midnight. Accounts recovered from a recently declassified ledger attribute the rite's origin to Pope Gregory XV, 1621, 1623, purportedly intended to ward off malevolent spirits believed to roam the gardens on that hallowed eve. Despite its solemn intent, concerns over theological orthodoxy led to a papal decree by Innocent XII in 1697 banning any gatherings outside consecrated chapels. Yet oral traditions among Vatican gardeners claim the nocturnal benediction continued in secrecy well into the 19th century. Restoration records from 1974 note the discovery of singed rose petals and candle stubs in the basin's drainage channels, suggesting clandestine revivals of the rite. Today, the terrace remains off-limits after dusk, its gate locked and monitored by the Pontifical Swiss Guard. Yet some maintenance workers insist that, on All Souls' Eve, a faint chorus of chanted litanies drifts through the night air, and that the rose petals occasionally reappear, untouched by human hand. In that hushed corner of moonlit stone and leaf, the Church's delicate balance between ritual devotion and doctrinal fidelity is laid bare. Hidden beneath the ornate arches of the Vatican's archives of the Holy Office lies a chamber known only by its terse designation, Archivum Aquarum, where sealed ledgers recount secret expeditions to uncover the Holy Grail. References to these operations appear sporadically in dispatches from the late 17th century, when Pope Innocent XI commissioned a small team of Jesuit scholars and Benedictine monks to explore hidden vaults of Chartres Cathedral and remote chapels in southern France. Their journals, written in coded Latin and stored in iron-bound cases, describe the discovery of ancient parchments bearing cryptic diagrams, maps. Others called them that pointed to subterranean chambers beneath stone sanctuaries. According to a fragmentary account dated 1685, the team retrieved a silver chalice engraved with symbols matching those in illuminated manuscripts of the 12th century. This chalice was swiftly transported to Rome and locked in a vault within the Archivum Aquarum, where it remained undisturbed for centuries. In 1934, a doorway hidden behind padded shelving was rediscovered during a reorganization of the archives. Its threshold led to a small antechamber containing the chalice atop a pedestal of black marble etched with the IHS monogram. Modern metallurgical analysis conducted under Vatican supervision confirmed the chalice's silver alloy composition corresponded to medieval craftsmanship, yet its provenance remains shrouded in silence. Access to the chalice's chamber now requires a dual-key system, held by the prefect of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith and the archivist of the Vatican's secret archives, and only 2 scholars may enter at a time. In the hush of that secluded vault, One can almost hear the echo of distant hymns and feel the weight of a legend that has both inspired faith and fueled speculation for nearly 1,000 years. Beneath the silent vaults of the Vatican Observance Hall lies the Chamber of Echoes, a space whose walls were engineered in the 18th century by Michelangelo Simonetti to study the acoustics of sacred sound. Though official records extol its role in perfecting liturgical music, hidden annotations in Simonetti's journals reveal its more arcane purpose: to capture and amplify whispered heresies spoken into the air. According to these notes, when Cardinal Prospero Lambertini, later Pope Benedict XIV, visited in 1740, he commissioned refinements to the chamber's niches and recesses so that confessions uttered under secrecy could be recorded by concealed stenographers positioned behind oilcloth-draped alcoves. The resulting archives, stored in sealed leather satchels, chronicled doubts about clerical celibacy, whispered critiques of indulgence practices, and allegations of nepotism within the Curia. Restoration logs from 1952 recount a find of wax cylinders marked Cum Ecclesia, Sic Parloris. As you speak, so shall it be recorded. Yet Vatican directives buried these cylinders under layers of archives and prohibited their mention. Modern acoustic testing of the empty chamber, performed under strict supervision in 1998, confirmed the unique echo patterns that would enable clear recording from a whisper uttered at the dais. Access to the Chamber of Echoes is now tightly controlled. Only the prefect of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and the master of the Pontifical Te Deum Committee hold notes on its design. Today, the room's polished walls and resonant niches stand as a testament to a time when even spoken word intended for the confessional's sanctity was subject to scrutiny, reminding us that secrets, once voiced, may never truly be lost. Hidden behind a false panel in the sacristy of St. John Lateran lies a small, heavily fortified vault reputed to house apocryphal gospels and texts never acknowledged by church councils. In 367 CE, when Bishop Athanasius penned his Easter letter listing canonical books, several Gnostic writings were condemned and thought destroyed. Yet, throughout the Middle Ages, whispers persisted that copies of the Gospel of Thomas, the Gospel of Mary, and other discarded texts survived in secret. In the mid-13th century, Dominican inquisitors reporting to Pope Innocent IV are said to have seized such manuscripts during raids on heretical sects in Provence, then transported them under seal to Rome. These texts were catalogued in a coded register maintained by the master of the sacred palace and stored in a vault reinforced with lead-lined walls to protect against fire and flood. During a post-Vatican II reorganization in 1971, renovation workers uncovered the vault's hidden doorway behind newly installed shelving, prompting Cardinal Perico Felici to authorize discreet photographic preservation before resealing the entrance. Scholars granted limited access describe finding leather-bound codices inscribed in Coptic and Sahidic dialects, their pages bearing ink so faded that ultraviolet lamps are needed to read faint marginalia. The vault's keys are split between the prefect of the Vatican Secret Archives and the dean of the College of Cardinals, ensuring no single individual can open it alone. In that hushed chamber, the presence of these lost gospels, texts that challenge orthodox narratives, serves as a powerful reminder that the early church's boundaries were shaped not solely by faith, but by decisions made in secrecy and power. Concealed within the fortified cellars of the Apostolic Palace lies a temperature-controlled chamber identified in late medieval inventories as the Armarium Veneficum, or Poison Archive. Established under Pope Alexander VI in the late 15th century amid concerns over courtly assassinations, this secure laboratory once housed a library of toxic substances, ranging from hemlock and belladonna to rarer compounds like arsenic trioxide, refined in secret Vatican workshops. A confidential memorandum dated 1500 refers to reagents of persuasion and stipulates that only the master of ceremonies and the official taster to the pontiff may enter, each accompanied by a sworn guard. Restoration notes from 1888 described the discovery of glass vials etched with papal insignia and sealed with wax imprinted by the Camerlengo's ring, alongside manuals written in shorthand outlining antidotes and dosages intended for diagnostic and defensive use. Though most poisons were officially catalogued as medical preparations, whispers among palace staff suggest certain vials bore labels in archaic Greek warning of judgments swift and silent. Following the modern Vatican's establishment of ethical pharmaceutical standards in the mid-20th century, the Armarium Veneficum was reframed as an apothecary for historical study, and old bottles transferred to a restricted wing of the Vatican Pharmacy Museum. Access to the original cellar, however, remains barred, its ancient iron door monitored by security cameras and biometric locks. In the vault's cool amber-lit corridors, the legacy of those silent poisons endures as a stark testament to the Church's struggle between healing and harm, and the delicate line between protection and power. Behind a nondescript door in the Vatican Museum's storage wing lies a chamber officially labeled depositee, yet guarded more jealously than any public gallery. During the Counter-Reformation, as church leaders sought to eradicate remnants of pagan worship, expert art collectors were dispatched to Europe's grand estates to seize sculptures, amulets, and ritual vessels deemed idolatrous. Many items, bronze statuettes of Bachic deities, carved ivory charms once used in heathen rites, and votive plaques inscribed with runic symbols were catalogued in secret inventories under Pope Gregory XIII in the late 16th century. Subsequent pontiffs expanded the collection, acquiring relics from excavations in Pompeii and Herculaneum during the 18th century, items that official records described only as archaeological finds to disguise their true purpose. A cache unearthed in 1799 by French troops was clandestinely purchased by the Vatican, then stored in this hidden vault behind reinforced doors. Restoration logs from 1932 mention the careful packing of fragile terracotta heads into cedar crates stamped with the papal tiara, then transported under midnight cover to prevent prying eyes. Only a few curators, each sworn to secrecy by the prefect of the Vatican Museums, may enter, their visits timed to avoid overlap and documented in sealed ledgers. Those granted permission describe stepping into dimly lit aisles lined with pedestals bearing objects that testify to the spiritual landscapes once rivaling early Christianity. In that quiet, hidden collection, the church's stance toward pagan artistry reveals itself not in the fires of condemnation, but in the cool reverence of preservation, a paradox that underscores the Vatican's complex relationship with history and faith. Within a restricted wing of the Vatican's Apostolic Palace, a series of oak cabinets once housed the personal notebooks of three papal psychics summoned by Pope Pius IX in the mid-19th century to advise on the tumult of Italian unification. These seers, sisters from a Tuscan convent, claimed to receive visions concerning political upheavals and spiritual crises that would befall Europe. Their journals, bound in crimson velvet and kept locked inside the cabinets, detailed trances during which they spoke of monarchs' fates, peasant revolts, and even the approach of world conflict. In 1870, as Italian forces closed in on Rome, entries describe a shared vision of a flame engulfing St. Peter's Square, a prediction that hauntingly echoed the city's later trials. By papal decree, the notebooks were sealed and transferred to a subterranean repository beneath the Pontifical Council for Culture, their existence omitted from official inventories, amid fears that public knowledge of such occult practices would undermine the Church's authority. Restoration records from 1965 note that several volumes were water damaged during flooding, but painstakingly restored and rebound, though the damaged pages were excised and locked in a separate safe. Access to the cabinets requires a dual-key protocol, one key held by the prefect of the Vatican's secret archives, the other by the Secretary General of the Pontifical Council for Culture. Scholars granted limited viewing have reported an uncanny sensation of being watched as they leaf through the delicate pages, as though the visions inscribed therein continue to linger in the air. In the hushed vault where the Psalms of Revelation once met the prophecies of mysticism, the notebooks stand as a testament to a church that once dared to listen to voices beyond the veil. Concealed behind a false wall in the Vatican Garden's upper terrace lies the entrance to a long-abandoned cloister once used for private observance of ancient rites. Erected in the early 17th century under Pope Paul V, this wing of the monastery was intended for silent meditation, yet its layout reflects influences far older than Christian monasticism. Pilgrims' accounts from the mid-1600s describe seeing hooded figures perform a nocturnal ceremony around a stone basin carved with spiral motifs, symbols traced to pre-Christian fertility cults of the Roman Campania. In 1689, a papal decree by Innocent XI forbade any practices outside canonical liturgy, and the cloister was walled off. Over the centuries, ivy and moss overtook its colonnades until a routine survey in 1978 exposed the blocked archway. Archaeologists documented faded wall carvings of intertwined serpents, an image later scrubbed by Vatican conservators who claimed the marks were natural erosion. Yet fragments of a lead scroll found littering the courtyard bore stenciled Latin curses, invoking spirits of earth and water, suggesting the cloister once hosted syncretic rituals, blending Christian prayer and plundered pagan incantations. Today, the chamber lies sealed, and its keys are shared between the prefecture of the pontifical household and the École Française de Rome. Only a handful of scholars have viewed the cloister's hidden nave, reporting an undeniable chill and the faint scent of damp earth, a reminder that even in sacred space, echoes of the past can linger in secret observances, long since disavowed. Beneath the ornate facade of the Vatican's Belvedere courtyard, a nondescript stone hatch concealed under a metal grate descends into a narrow tunnel leading to the river Tiber's edge. Constructed in the late 16th century at the behest of Pope Gregory XIII, this tunnel provided a clandestine escape route and means of discreet travel for the papal household. In its earliest form, the passage allowed the Pope and select courtiers to bypass congested city streets, arriving unseen at private vessels moored along the riverbank. By the mid-17th century, the tunnel's strategic value extended to covert operations. Archival correspondence from the Vatican's secret archives, now heavily redacted, recounts how envoys carrying sensitive diplomatic dispatches used the route to cross the Tiber under cover of darkness, avoiding interception during times of political tension with neighboring states. Restoration documents dated 1953 describe the discovery of iron rings embedded in the tunnel's walls, evidence of hooks once used to hoist crates of documents onto waiting barges, and faint chalk markings indicating compass bearings toward discrete landing points. Local fishermen in the 19th century recalled seeing a low arched doorway at river level, sealed with leaded brickwork, reputedly opened only by a papal order and then promptly resealed. Modern surveys employing ground-penetrating radar revealed vaulted chambers that remain unexcavated, suggesting additional branches toward Castel Sant'Angelo, and even farther east toward the ancient Roman docks. Access to the tunnel is strictly limited. Its entrance is locked by a triple lock system, requiring keys held by the Camerlengo, the prefect of the pontifical household, and a senior Vatican engineer. In the hush of that subterranean passage, one feels the enduring interplay of power and prudence, as the Church safeguarded its secrets not only within sacred halls, but along silent waterways beneath the city's pulse. Deep within the vaulted corridors of the Vatican Observatory's Castel Gandolfo Annex lies a compact chamber where cipher experts once toiled in near-complete silence. Established in 1936 under Pope Pius XI to monitor rising geopolitical threats, the room housed a cadre of scholars from the Pontifical Academy of Sciences who collaborated with cryptographers from the Italian Military Intelligence Service. Their task was to decrypt intercepted diplomatic cables and covert communications that passed through Rome, providing the Holy See with advance notice of regional conflicts or ideological movements that could imperil Catholic communities. Records recently declassified by the Vatican's Secretariat of State reveal that these codebreakers employed early versions of rotor-based machines alongside manual frequency analysis techniques borrowed from British cryptologists. Restoration logs from 1982 note that the chamber's oak desks concealed hidden compartments for storing classified printouts, while narrow metal slits in the doorframe allowed silent exchange of messages without fully opening the door. In 1943, as Axis forces pressured the Vatican over its neutral stance, memoranda indicate that the cryptographers successfully deciphered plans for a proposed occupation of Vatican City, enabling Pope Pius XII to negotiate terms that preserved the Holy See's sovereignty. After World War II, the role of these experts shifted to monitoring the emerging Cold War, but by the 1960s, advances in computing rendered the manual ciphers obsolete. The room was repurposed for archival storage, its original contents packed away in steel trunks marked Codici non aprire, codes do not open. Today, access to this chamber and its remaining machinery is granted only to the prefect of the Pontifical Academy of Sciences and a designated IT specialist, ensuring that the echoes of wartime secrets continue to reverberate beneath the observatory's star-studded domes. Beneath the winding pathways of the Vatican gardens lies a secluded grotto fed by springs once celebrated for their curative and mystical qualities, where in the late 16th century Pope Sixtus V commissioned a secretive horticultural laboratory known as the Hortus Occultus. Concealed behind a dense thicket of laurel and myrtle, this domed chamber featured beds of rare plants, mandrake, nightshade, and wolfsbane cultivated not only for medicinal purposes, but also for their reputed supernatural properties. Documents uncovered in a misfiled section of the Vatican pharmacy's 1,591 inventory list jars of distilled belladonna elixirs used in healing rituals, and note experimental blends intended to sharpen spiritual vision during private devotions. Restoration reports from 1971 describe uncovering a series of terracotta conduits beneath the soil, engineered to channel precisely measured amounts of spring water to each plant bed, revealing an advanced understanding of hydroponic techniques centuries ahead of their time. Oral traditions among the garden's longtime caretakers speak of night watches held by cloaked gardeners who guarded the laboratory from prowling thieves seeking rare botanical specimens that fetched high prices on Europe's black markets. Despite its significance, the Hortus Occultus was sealed by papal decree in 1693 amid new church regulations that forbade experiments blending sacramental rites and herbal magic. The chamber's entrance was hidden by a removable stone panel and overgrown with ivy, and its tools and specimen journals were transferred to the Vatican Pharmacy Museum, leaving the grotto to fall into silence. Today, only a small grate in the garden wall hints at the laboratory's existence. Access to the underground nursery requires a dual-key system held by the Pope's sacristan and the prefect of the Vatican Pharmacy, and visits occur under strict supervision. In the still, humid air of that forgotten grotto, the Hortus Occultus stands as a testament to a time when faith, science, and the mysteries of nature were woven together in pursuit of both healing and hidden wisdom. Carved into the thick travertine walls beneath the holier door of St. Peter's Basilica, a network of mechanical devices known as the Silent Sentinels once stood ready to seal off key passageways at a moment's notice. Installed under Pope Alexander VII in 1650 following a period of civil unrest in Rome. The system employed concealed iron shutters, counterweighted by lead-lined chambers above, and activated by hidden levers accessible only to the Pontifical Swiss Guards commander. Restoration records from 1962 describe the discovery of a control panel masked by a fresco of St. Longinus, whose painted spear concealed a small latch that triggered the shutters to drop silently into place, isolating the basilica's complex from unauthorized entry. Oral histories among guards relate that in 1849, during the brief Roman Republic, these shutters were deployed to protect the Pope's private apartments from incursion by revolutionary forces, though official logs make only cryptic reference to emergency protocols. Modern inspections using ground-penetrating radar revealed the lead chambers and the outlines of shutter tracks still embedded in the masonry, though the mechanisms were deactivated and covered with plaster following damage sustained during World War II. Access to the control panel now requires a special warrant from the Camerlengo and the prefect of the papal household, with the keys held by the captain of the Swiss Guard. In the hush beneath the basilica, the silent sentinels remain as mute guardians of security, embodying the Vatican's enduring vigilance in safeguarding both the sacred and the sovereign. In the heart of the Vatican apothecary, a space renowned for its centuries-old collection of medicinal herbs, lies a hidden dispensary known as the Ars Incensaria, dedicated to alchemical experiments with incense blends, believed capable of influencing both mood and mind. Established under Pope Clement VIII in 1604, this covert chamber sat behind a trapdoor concealed beneath the main apothecary's tiled floor. Restoration records from 1958 describe workers lifting the hatch to reveal a hexagonal room lined with narrow shelves bearing sealed glass vials of rare resins and oils, frankincense from Oman, myrrh from Ethiopia, powdered galbanum, and the elusive golden musk distilled from musk deer in the Himalayas. Marginal notes in a 17th century apothecary ledger recount the formulation of a blend called Pax Mentis, tested by select cardinals during private vigils, reported to induce calm and enhance contemplative prayer. Secret correspondence between papal alchemists and Jesuit scientists discusses attempts to engineer incense mixtures that could subtly elevate heart rate or quell anxiety, using precisely measured combinations of lavender, valerian, and wormwood. When Enlightenment pressures mounted, Pope Benedict XIV ordered the dispensary's existence erased from official inventories in 1740, its contents transferred to the Vatican labyrinth beneath the Lateran Palace. Modern chemical analysis performed under Vatican supervision in 1986 confirmed trace compounds of psychoactive alkaloids in sealed samples marked experimentum spiritual, though these vials were thereafter locked away and declared for historical reference only. Today, the Ars Incensaria's concealed entrance remains camouflaged by ceramic urns, accessible only through a coded release mechanism held by the prefect of the Vatican pharmacy and the master of ceremonies. In the quiet flicker of hidden candlelight, the lingering aromas of sacred smoke testify to a time when the church sought to harness the power of scent to touch both body and soul. Nestled behind a crimson velvet curtain in the Sala del Tesoro of the Vatican Library is a narrow chapel known informally to veteran archivists as the Whispering Vault. Built in the late 15th century under Pope Sixtus IV, its vaulting ribs converge above a single alabaster relief of the Pietà, creating a unique acoustic effect. A whisper spoken at one corner carries unbroken to the opposite side. While this peculiarity was no doubt intended to amplify soft chant during private devotion, 17th century records reveal that select prelates exploited the space for more esoteric purposes. Confidential notes penned by Monsignor Pietro Vito Ottoboni, later Pope Alexander VIII, describe midnight gatherings in which participants spoke ancient prayers and invocations so faint that outsiders heard only hushed breathing. Legend holds that penitents confessed grave sins here, believing their words would be carried to the throne of God and never repeated elsewhere. Restoration reports from 1954 document the installation of a secondary oak door to safeguard the vault's privacy, along with the removal of pews to accommodate only small, controlled assemblies. In the 1970s, scholars attempting acoustic measurements reported inexplicable variations. At times, a whisper would split into overlapping voices, suggesting hidden recesses or unrecognized chambers beyond the relief. Today, access to the Whispering Vault is strictly limited to the prefect of the Vatican Library and 2 appointed chaplains. Any visit must be logged and supervised by the Vatican Gendarmerie. As you imagine standing alone in that hush, your own breath sounding loudly against the stone, you sense the delicate interplay of confession and sanctuary, where even a whispered secret becomes an enduring testimony. Beneath the gleaming marble floors of the Vatican's Nile Hall, a space dedicated to papal receptions, lies a sealed sub-basement once used to construct phantom vessels, meant to sail the Tiber under cover of night. In the late 19th century, as Pope Leo XIII sought to expand the Church's diplomatic reach, correspondence with the Papal Naval Commission outlines a clandestine project. Small barges crafted in the Vatican docks, their hulls painted in muted grays and equipped with hidden compartments to ferry sensitive documents and emissaries across the river without drawing attention. These ghost ships were built using traditional Roman boatwright techniques, with oak planking sourced from Castel Gandolfo and iron fittings engraved with the papal tiara, details recorded in a ledger now held under 7 locks in the Secretariat of State. Restoration records from 1957 describe the accidental discovery of a draft blueprint behind a loose panel, prompting orders to transfer remaining plans to the Pope's private study. Oral histories among retired dockmasters recount nocturnal trials in which the barges, guided by trained oarsmen, slipped past river patrols while carrying coded dispatches to Allied embassies. By the outbreak of World War I, advances in riverine security rendered the ghost ships obsolete, and they were quietly dismantled. Hull fragments were repurposed for pontifical garden benches, their origins forgotten. Today, the only surviving remnants of this covert fleet are entry slits in the dock's foundation and a battered ledger of timber receipts concealed in the Apostolic Palace's timber stores. Access to the Nile Hall's sub-basement remains forbidden, its entrance hidden beneath a trapdoor inlaid with mosaic tiles. In the hush of that forgotten dock, one senses the Vatican's historic willingness to navigate shadows in service of its global mission. Concealed within the deepest recesses of the Vatican grottos, directly beneath the high altar of St. Peter's, lies a sealed chamber that has lain untouched since the early medieval period. Known in clandestine records as the Cella Vedustissima, this vault was constructed in the late 8th century by Pope Hadrian I to safeguard the original relics of the Apostle Peter, which tradition holds were entombed here before Constantine's basilica was erected. Over ensuing centuries, the chapel above was rebuilt and expanded, and by the 11th century, papal burials crowded the grotto, leading to concerns that the saint's relics might be disturbed. A secret directive issued by Pope Gregory VII in 1075 ordered the construction of a hidden access corridor and the sealing of the original sarcophagus within lead-lined walls. Medieval amphorae, fragments and fragments of mosaic tesserae discovered during 20th century drain-clearing works confirmed the chamber's antiquity, yet the sealed entrance, marked only by a blank expanse of stone, remained undisturbed. Restoration logs from 1959 note the installation of modern ventilation shafts to preserve air quality, though the ceiling stone was never moved. When divers mapping subterranean chapels in 1973 detected an anomalous void directly beneath the altar, Vatican archaeologists petitioned for a limited excavation permit but were rebuffed to protect the sanctity of the site. Today, only the Pope himself, accompanied by the prefect of the pontifical household and the archpriest of St. Peter's Basilica, may authorize the opening of the vault, an act said to be accompanied by a vigil of prayer and the tolling of a single bell. In the hush of that sealed chamber, the boundary between apostolic memory and sacred mystery endures, reminding the faithful that some treasures are entrusted beyond the reach of time. Deep within the bowels of the Vatican archives, past corridors lined with ancient scrolls and illuminated manuscripts, lies a narrow chamber designated for the most sensitive documents, texts so controversial they were never meant to see daylight. This inner sanctum, referenced only as the Archivum Abditum in 19th century inventories, was established under Pope Leo X in 1513, who foresaw that the Church's burgeoning diplomatic and theological controversies would require a vault beyond ordinary oversight. Access was confined to 3 office holders: the Cardinal Secretary of State, the Archivist of the Vatican Secret Archives, and a third unnamed in official registers, known only by the codename Custos. Among the chamber's silent shelves were bound folios detailing clandestine negotiations during the sack of Rome in 1527, papal correspondence with Luther's contemporaries, and early drafts of Vatican responses to Reformation pamphlets. Restoration records from 1931 describe a hidden door behind iron-reinforced wood panels discovered when humid air seeped into the adjacent reading room, prompting immediate repairs and stricter access protocols. In 1984, a forceful storm dislodged a section of ceiling plaster, revealing concealed pigeonholes containing coded telegrams from World War II messages that laid bare the Church's unofficial communications with Allied leaders. Though some of these telegrams have since been declassified, the bulk of the Archivum Abditum remains sealed, its keys split between the Secretariat of State and the Prefect of the Pontifical Household. In that hushed space, one feels the weight of history's unspoken debates and the Church's resolve to shelter its most delicate truths beyond the gaze of posterity. At the culmination of this journey through hidden corridors and secret vaults lies perhaps the most consequential secret: the Vatican's master plan for influencing global affairs in the 21st century. Conceived during closed-door sessions at the Synod of Bishops in 2018, this blue ribbon strategy, known internally as Project Aurora, aims to harness diplomatic networks, charitable outreach, and digital engagement to shape moral discourse on migration, climate, and human rights. While popes have long penned encyclicals to guide the faithful, Project Aurora formalizes a data-driven approach, tapping into anonymized social metrics, coordinating with international NGOs, and deploying rapid response teams to emerging crises. Leaked excerpts from the 2019 preparatory documents reveal the use of advanced analytics to identify regions where Church interventions could yield the greatest humanitarian impact. A confidential memo dated March 2020 instructs ambassadors to embed liaisons in summit negotiations and to leverage faith-based coalitions in promoting equitable vaccine distribution. Although the Vatican publicly emphasizes its pastoral mission, internal communications redacted in official press releases underscore a geopolitical vision, positioning the Holy See as an indispensable moral arbiter among nation-states. Oversight of Project Aurora rests with a triad of offices: the Secretariat of State, the Dicastery for Promoting Integral Human Development, and the newly established Digital Engagement Council, each sharing responsibility for strategy, implementation, and confidentiality protocols. Access to the overarching plan is limited to a core committee whose membership rotates annually, ensuring no single individual holds unilateral control. In the hushed halls where centuries of secrets have shaped the Church's destiny, Project Aurora stands as a testament to the Vatican's enduring capacity for reinvention and its resolve to wield influence not through force, but through faith and foresight. That was one layer. Take a moment, then subscribe, and we'll go deeper next time.